Chosen one. Have you ever looked back at certain moments in your life and realized that something protected you in ways you couldn't explain? Perhaps there were situations that should have completely destroyed you. Moments where everything seemed to collapse around you, where the pressure was too great and the outcome should have been devastating. Yet somehow you survived. Somehow you walked away from circumstances that looked certain to break you. There were relationships that entered your life with promise, people you trusted, people you believed were meant to walk beside you for years, only for those connections to suddenly collapse without warning. At the time it felt painful, confusing and deeply unfair. And there were paths that looked promising, opportunities that seemed perfect, doors that opened just wide enough for you to believe they were meant for you, only to close abruptly before you could step through them. In those moments it may have felt like loss, it may have felt like rejection, it may even have felt like abandonment. But what if those moments were not losses at all? What if the relationship that ended was never meant to carry you into your future? What if the opportunity that disappeared was quietly leading you away from something that would have damaged your purpose? What if the door that closed was not rejection, but protection? For many chosen ones, life unfolds in ways that cannot be easily explained by coincidence alone. There is often a quiet pattern that becomes visible only when you look back. A pattern where danger appears, yet you escape it. A pattern where harmful situations begin to form, yet somehow you are removed before the worst can happen. A pattern where confusion eventually reveals itself as guidance. The chosen ones often move through life with the subtle feeling that something unseen is guiding them. You may not always understand it in the moment, and sometimes the guidance feels more like disruption than direction, while others fall into destructive cycles, toxic environments, or paths that slowly erode their peace. You somehow find yourself pulled away from those same traps. Sometimes it happens through circumstances that feel inconvenient or disappointing at the time. Sometimes it happens through separation, through sudden changes, or through moments that force you to start over. But over time, a realization begins to form. Perhaps you were never walking alone. This is not about luck. It is not about random chance. Across many spiritual traditions and faith teachings, there is a powerful belief that those who are called for a greater purpose are often surrounded by a quiet form of divine protection. It is not always loud or dramatic. It does not always appear as miracles in the way people imagine them. Instead, it works silently in the background of your life, redirecting your steps, closing certain doors, and guiding you away from dangers you may never even realize existed. In this video, we are going to explore the deeper meaning behind divine protection in the lives of the chosen ones. We will talk about the subtle signs that this protection may have already been operating throughout your journey, and we will examine why God sometimes protects you in ways that initially feel like loss, delay, or disappointment. When you begin to see these patterns clearly, your understanding of your own life story may change in ways you never expected. And if this message resonates with your journey, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear these words today, and subscribe to the channel for more insights about the path of the chosen ones. Chosen one. One of the most misunderstood aspects of the spiritual journey is the reason certain lives seem to encounter unusual resistance. You may have asked yourself many times why your path has never felt ordinary, why challenges seem to appear at moments when you are about to grow, why opposition sometimes rises without clear explanation, and why people occasionally react to you with jealousy, hostility, or suspicion, even when you have done nothing to deserve it. For many chosen ones, this pattern begins long before they understand their identity or their purpose. It can start in childhood, in family dynamics, in social environments, or in moments where they are misunderstood for simply being different. What many people fail to recognize is that the life of someone called to a higher purpose often attracts resistance precisely because of that calling. Across many spiritual traditions, there is a recurring theme that individuals chosen for a meaningful mission do not move through life unnoticed by opposing forces. In religious language, these forces are sometimes described as darkness, spiritual opposition, or the presence of influences that resist truth and transformation. The idea behind this belief is not that chosen individuals are constantly under attack in a dramatic sense, but that their existence represents something disruptive to systems built on deception, fear, or corruption. A person who carries light into dark places naturally exposes what others would prefer to keep hidden. A person who speaks truth threatens structures that depend on silence. A person who inspires hope challenges environments that rely on despair. Because of this, the path of the chosen one rarely unfolds without resistance. Think about the role that truth plays in the world. Truth has a way of revealing what people are trying to conceal. It exposes motives, it reveals injustice, and it brings hidden realities into the open. When someone carries the courage or the calling to stand for truth, even quietly, their presence can make others uncomfortable. Not because they are intentionally trying to challenge anyone, but because authenticity and integrity naturally illuminate what is false. In this way, chosen ones often disrupt darkness simply by existing as who they truly are. Their character, their faith, their resilience, and their ability to continue walking forward even through adversity becomes a form of quiet resistance against forces that seek to suppress growth and transformation. Because of this dynamic, spiritual teachings often describe chosen individuals as people whose lives are surrounded by a form of divine protection. This protection does not mean they are immune to hardship. In fact, many chosen ones experience more trials than the average person. The difference is not the absence of challenges, but the presence of preservation. Divine protection operates in a way that ensures the chosen one's destiny cannot be destroyed before its time. Obstacles may appear, opposition may arise, and circumstances may become difficult, but something continues to guide the chosen one through those moments until their purpose begins to unfold. One of the most important things to understand about divine protection is that it does not remove every challenge from the path. Many people imagine protection as a life where nothing goes wrong, where danger never appears, and where difficulties are instantly removed. Yet the pattern seen throughout spiritual history tells a different story. Protection is not the absence of struggle. Instead, it is the assurance that struggle will not ultimately defeat the person who has been called. The chosen one may walk through storms, but those storms do not have the power to erase their destiny. They may face betrayal, rejection, or misunderstanding, but these experiences often become the very events that shape their character and strengthen their purpose. In many ways, the challenges themselves become part of the preparation process. A mission that is meant to inspire others requires someone who understands suffering, perseverance, and faith. A calling that involves guiding people through darkness requires someone who has personally experienced difficult seasons and learned how to survive them. The trials that appear in the life of the chosen one often serve as training grounds, where resilience, wisdom, and spiritual maturity are developed. Divine protection does not eliminate these experiences, but it ensures that they refine the chosen one rather than destroy them. When we look at the stories found throughout biblical history, this pattern becomes even clearer. Many figures who were later recognized as leaders, prophets, or messengers experienced periods of intense difficulty before their purpose was revealed. Consider the life of Joseph. As a young man, he carried a vision of the future that he did not yet fully understand. Instead of immediate success, his life became filled with betrayal, rejection, and injustice. He was sold by his own brothers, falsely accused, and imprisoned in a foreign land. From a human perspective, it appeared as though his life had been completely derailed. Yet through every stage of that journey, something preserved him. Circumstances that should have destroyed him instead positioned him for a role that would later save countless lives. The story of David follows a similar pattern. Before he became king, David spent years running from danger, hiding from those who wanted to take his life. He faced threats from enemies, betrayal from those close to him, and moments where survival itself seemed uncertain. Yet despite these dangers, his life was repeatedly preserved. The protection surrounding him did not remove him from conflict, but it ensured that the conflict could not eliminate the purpose he had been called to fulfill. Even the life of Moses illustrates this principle. As a child, he faced a threat that should have ended his life before it even began. Yet through a series of unlikely circumstances, he was protected, raised in an unexpected environment, and later guided toward the role he was meant to play. The path was filled with challenges, doubts, and opposition. but each stage of the journey prepared him for the responsibility he would eventually carry. These stories reveal a consistent spiritual principle. The individuals who were called to significant missions were not spared from hardship. Instead, they were preserved through hardship until the moment when their purpose could be revealed. The protection surrounding them operated quietly and consistently, guiding their lives in ways they could not always see at the time. For many chosen ones watching this message, the same pattern may already exist in your own story. There may have been moments when circumstances appeared overwhelming, when situations seemed impossible to survive, or when people tried to undermine or diminish your path. At the time, you may have felt confused or even abandoned. Yet when you look back, you may also notice something remarkable. Somehow you are still here. Somehow the challenges that once threatened to break you became experiences that strengthened you. Somehow, the obstacles that appeared in your path did not succeed in stopping your journey. This is often how divine protection works in the life of the chosen one. It does not always appear as a dramatic miracle in the moment. Instead, it unfolds through a series of quiet interventions, subtle redirections, and unexpected outcomes that keep the chosen one moving forward. The storms may still arrive, but they do not have the authority to erase the destiny that has been placed upon that life. Understanding this truth can change the way you interpret your past and the way you approach your future. The difficulties you faced may not have been signs that you were forgotten. They may have been evidence that your life was being preserved for something greater than you could see at the time. The resistance you encountered may not have been random opposition. It may have been the natural response that occurs when light enters places where darkness has long been comfortable. And if that is true, then every challenge you survived carries deeper meaning. Every moment where you thought you would fall, but somehow continued forward, becomes part of a larger story, a story where the chosen one is not defined by the obstacles they faced, but by the protection that carried them through those obstacles until their purpose was ready to emerge. When we begin to understand why the chosen ones require divine protection, another realization slowly starts to emerge. Protection does not always look like protection when you are living through it. In fact, many of the most powerful moments of divine intervention appear at first as loss, disappointment, or confusion. This is one of the most difficult lessons on the spiritual path. In the moment, what is actually safeguarding your future can feel like something that is tearing it apart. In the previous section, we explored why chosen ones often encounter resistance and why divine protection exists to preserve their purpose. But the next part of this truth is even more personal, that protection is not always dramatic or visible. It often works quietly through events that initially feel like setbacks. Only later, sometimes years later, does the meaning become clear. Many chosen ones eventually look back at their lives and begin to notice a pattern. Moments that once felt like failure or rejection slowly reveal themselves as turning points that prevented far greater harm. Situations that seemed unfair at the time turn out to have been necessary redirections. What felt like a door slamming shut may have been the very act that protected you from walking down a path that would have damaged your future. One of the most common examples appears in the form of lost opportunities. Imagine a job that you desperately wanted. Perhaps you prepared for it, prayed about it, and believed it was the breakthrough you had been waiting for. Maybe everything seemed to align perfectly at first. The interview went well, the environment looked promising, and you began imagining the life that opportunity would create. But then, something unexpected happened. The offer disappeared. The opportunity fell apart. The position went to someone else. In that moment, it may have felt like rejection, like a door closing in your face after you had already begun stepping toward it. Yet time has a way of revealing hidden truths. Months later, or even years later, you may discover information about that same environment that completely changes your perspective. Perhaps the workplace turned out to be filled with toxic leadership, manipulation, or instability. Perhaps the organization collapsed, leaving many people struggling. Perhaps that environment would have drained your peace, your creativity, and your sense of purpose. What once looked like a missed opportunity slowly reveals itself as protection that you did not recognize at the time. The same pattern often appears in relationships. For many chosen ones, relationships can be both deeply meaningful and deeply painful experiences. You may have encountered someone who felt incredibly important to your journey. Maybe you believed that person would remain in your life for many years. You invested time, energy, trust, and emotional vulnerability into that connection. But then something happened that caused the relationship to collapse. It may have ended through betrayal, misunderstanding, distance, or circumstances you could not control. At the time, the ending of that relationship may have felt devastating. It may have left you questioning your judgment, your worth, or even your faith. Many chosen ones carry wounds from these experiences because the loss feels personal and confusing. But with enough distance, something surprising often becomes visible. The person who left may have carried patterns that would have eventually caused deeper damage. Perhaps their values were misaligned with your path. Perhaps they were not capable of supporting the direction your life was meant to take. What once felt like abandonment begins to reveal itself as protection that removed someone before the consequences became more severe. Divine protection sometimes operates through separation. When certain individuals leave your life, it may not be because you failed or because the connection had no meaning. Sometimes the separation is necessary to prevent a relationship from pulling you away from your purpose. The pain of that loss can feel overwhelming in the moment, but the long-term impact may be the preservation of your emotional well-being, your spiritual clarity, and your future. Opportunities can disappear in similar ways. Chosen ones often encounter moments where a path seems promising, but suddenly vanishes. A project you believed in may fall apart. A plan you worked toward may collapse unexpectedly. A door that appeared wide open may close before you can fully step through it. These moments create confusion because they challenge our sense of direction. When something feels right but still disappears, it can leave you wondering whether you misunderstood the signs or whether you made a mistake. Yet the story often continues in unexpected ways. The loss of one opportunity can redirect your attention towards something that aligns far more closely with your true calling. What you originally wanted may have been good, but not truly meant for you. Sometimes divine protection does not only prevent harm, it also guides you towards something greater than what you initially imagined. Many chosen ones discover that their true purpose emerged from moments that once felt like disappointment. The career that ultimately fulfilled them was not the one they originally pursued. The environment where they found growth was not the one they planned to enter. The mission that eventually defined their life appeared only after several earlier doors had closed. This is why hindsight becomes such a powerful teacher on the spiritual journey. When you examine your past carefully, patterns begin to appear. You may notice situations where you narrowly avoided harm. You may recognize people who once seemed important, but later revealed destructive intentions. You may see how certain failures redirected you toward experiences that strengthened your character and expanded your perspective. What once looked like rejection begins to take on a completely different meaning. Instead of asking why something was taken away, you begin to ask what it might have protected you from. Instead of viewing every closed door as loss, you start to see it as guidance. This shift in perspective can transform the way chosen ones interpret their own life story. Divine protection is rarely loud. It rarely announces itself with immediate clarity. More often it operates through subtle adjustments that only become visible with time. A missed opportunity today may prevent a crisis tomorrow. A painful ending today may preserve your peace for years to come. A sudden change of direction today may lead you toward the very purpose you were meant to fulfill. The challenge for many chosen ones is learning to trust this process, even when the outcome is not immediately clear. Human nature tends to interpret setbacks as failure and closed doors as rejection. It is difficult to see protection when you are standing in the middle of disappointment. But when faith and patience allow you to continue forward, the larger picture slowly begins to emerge. Many people reach a moment later in life where they look back at events that once seemed devastating and realize something astonishing. The things they once mourned were actually the very events that preserved their future. The opportunities they believed they lost were never truly meant for them. The relationships that ended created space for healthier and more meaningful connections. In that moment of realization, the narrative of their life begins to shift. Instead of seeing their past as a series of random disappointments, they begin to see a pattern of protection that has quietly guided them from one season to the next. The confusion of earlier years transforms into understanding, and for the chosen one, this realization carries a powerful message. What felt like rejection may have been protection. What looked like failure may have been redirection. What seemed like loss may have been the unseen hand of divine guidance, ensuring that your path continued moving toward the purpose that was always waiting for you. As we continue exploring the protection that many chosen ones only recognize in hindsight, another pattern begins to emerge that is often even more personal and emotionally difficult. In the previous section, we looked at how lost opportunities and unexpected endings can later reveal themselves as protection. Yet one of the most profound and painful forms of divine protection does not involve jobs, plans, or circumstances. It involves people. For many chosen ones, some of the most confusing moments in life occur when certain relationships suddenly dissolve. People who once felt close begin to drift away. Friends who seemed loyal change their behavior without explanation. Relationships that once carried deep emotional meaning slowly collapse or end abruptly. In those moments, the experience can feel deeply personal. It may create feelings of rejection, loneliness, or even self-doubt. You may ask yourself what went wrong, or why someone you trusted is no longer part of your life. Yet over time, many chosen ones begin to realize that some relationships are not meant to remain in their lives forever. Sometimes the distance that appears between you and another person is not simply a random breakdown in connection. Sometimes it is the quiet operation of divine protection creating necessary separation. Human relationships are powerful influences in shaping the direction of our lives. The people who surround us can either strengthen our sense of purpose or gradually pull us away from it. When a person carries jealousy, manipulation, hidden resentment, or destructive habits, their presence can slowly erode the clarity and peace required for someone to pursue a meaningful calling. The challenge is that these influences are not always obvious in the beginning. Many people present themselves as supportive companions while quietly harboring motives that do not align with your well-being. Chosen ones often discover that the closer they move toward their purpose, the more certain relationships begin to shift. Sometimes individuals who once seemed comfortable with your presence become uneasy when your life begins to change. Growth can unintentionally expose insecurities in others. When someone begins pursuing a path that involves deeper faith, stronger integrity, or greater personal transformation, it can create tension within relationships that were originally built on different values. Jealousy is one of the most subtle but powerful forces that can damage relationships. It does not always appear as open hostility. Sometimes it manifests through small remarks, quiet criticism, or a lack of genuine support when positive changes begin to appear in your life. Over time, these subtle behaviors can become emotionally draining. For the chosen one, who is often sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around them, such environments can create confusion and inner conflict. Manipulation can appear in similar ways. Some individuals maintain connections not out of mutual respect, but out of a desire to control or influence the direction of another person's life. They may discourage your growth, question your decisions, or subtly pressure you to remain in situations that limit your potential. When someone is walking toward a purpose that requires clarity, courage, and faith, these influences can become dangerous distractions. Because of this, divine protection sometimes operates through separation. The removal of certain individuals from your life may initially feel painful, but it may also prevent long-term emotional or spiritual harm. When someone who carries jealousy or manipulation is no longer part of your daily environment, the difference can become noticeable over time. Your mind becomes clearer. Your decisions become more confident. The constant tension that once surrounded your interactions begins to fade. For many chosen ones, this process of separation is accompanied by periods of isolation. These seasons can feel particularly difficult because human beings naturally seek connection and belonging. When multiple relationships begin to change or fade away at the same time, it may feel as though you are being left alone without explanation. Some chosen ones describe these periods as times when they felt completely misunderstood or disconnected from the people around them. Yet isolation can serve an important role in spiritual preparation. When the noise of many voices disappears, space is created for deeper reflection. Without constant external influence, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. Your understanding of your values, your beliefs, and your direction becomes stronger. Many individuals who later step into powerful roles of influence first pass through seasons where they are forced to confront themselves in silence. These quiet seasons allow clarity to emerge. When too many voices surround you, it can become difficult to distinguish between your authentic calling and the expectations of others. Separation removes many of those distractions. It creates an environment where you can examine your path honestly and listen more carefully to the guidance that may have been drowned out by external pressures. Another important aspect of separation is that it protects your focus. Pursuing a meaningful calling often requires concentration and discipline. Relationships that constantly pull your attention toward conflict, drama, or emotional instability can drain the energy needed to pursue that purpose. When certain people step away from your life, it may initially appear as loss. Yet in many cases, it is also the removal of distractions that would have prevented you from moving forward. Distance has a way of revealing truths that were difficult to see when you were emotionally close to someone. Once separation occurs, you may begin noticing patterns that were previously hidden. You may realize that certain conversations consistently left you feeling discouraged rather than supported. You may recognize behaviors that subtly undermined your confidence. With enough time and reflection, the separation that once felt confusing may begin to make sense. For the chosen one, this realization can transform the meaning of those experiences. Instead of viewing the distance as rejection, it becomes easier to understand it as protection. The removal of certain people may have been necessary to preserve your emotional strength and spiritual direction. What once felt like abandonment may have been the very mechanism through which your destiny was safeguarded. It is important to understand that separation does not always mean that the people involved are entirely malicious or evil. Sometimes individuals simply belong to different seasons of your life. As your path changes, the alignment between your values and theirs may naturally fade. The distance that forms between you may simply reflect the fact that your journey is moving in a direction that their path cannot follow. The chosen ones often walk through these transitions with mixed emotions. Gratitude for the memories that once existed can coexist with acceptance that the relationship has reached its natural conclusion. Letting go does not erase the value of what once was, but it acknowledges that the connection is no longer part of the future that is unfolding. When you look back on these experiences from a broader perspective, another pattern becomes visible. The people who leave often create space for new individuals to enter your life. These new connections may share values that align more closely with your purpose. They may provide encouragement rather than doubt. Instead of draining your energy, they strengthen your resolve and support your growth. This is another form of divine protection. By removing influences that could damage your path, space is created for relationships that nurture your calling rather than distract from it. The distance that once felt painful becomes part of a process that ultimately guides you toward healthier environments and more supportive communities. For the chosen one, recognizing this pattern can bring a sense of peace to experiences that once felt deeply confusing. The separation you endured may not have been random or meaningless. It may have been a quiet act of protection, ensuring that your journey continued without interference from influences that could have derailed your purpose. And when you begin to see it in this way, the narrative of your life changes once again. The distance between you and certain people no longer represents failure or rejection. Instead, it becomes evidence that something greater was guarding the direction of your life, carefully removing what did not belong so that the path ahead could remain clear. When we reflect on the separation that often appears in the lives of the chosen ones, another deeper layer of understanding begins to unfold. In the previous section, we explored how certain people are removed from your life as a form of protection, creating distance that ultimately preserves your purpose. Yet for many chosen ones, that separation is only one visible result of something much larger taking place behind the scenes. The relationships that change, the sudden redirections, and the unexpected removals are sometimes connected to a reality that many faith traditions have spoken about for centuries. These traditions suggest that beyond what we see in the physical world, there are unseen battles unfolding in the spiritual realm. For many believers, the concept of spiritual warfare describes a conflict between forces that represent light and those that represent darkness. This idea does not necessarily mean dramatic or frightening events are constantly taking place around every individual. Instead, it reflects the belief that whenever a person carries a purpose capable of bringing truth, hope, or transformation into the world, that purpose naturally encounters resistance from forces that oppose it. The chosen one, because of their calling, often finds themselves standing in the middle of this unseen tension. Many people imagine battles as events that can be clearly observed. They think of visible conflict, direct opposition, or obvious struggles. Yet spiritual conflict often operates in a much quieter way. It may appear through subtle shifts in circumstances, unexpected obstacles, or moments when situations suddenly change direction without explanation. From the outside, these events may look like coincidence, but for many chosen ones, a pattern begins to emerge over time that suggests something deeper is taking place. Consider moments in your life when circumstances shifted in ways that you could not fully understand. Perhaps you were about to enter a situation that looked promising, only for something unexpected to interrupt the process. Maybe a conversation occurred that revealed information at exactly the right moment, preventing you from making a harmful decision. Perhaps someone who intended to cause harm was unexpectedly exposed before their actions could affect you. These moments often feel strange or surprising when they happen, but they may be examples of unseen intervention. The idea that unseen battles exist is deeply rooted in many spiritual teachings. These traditions describe the spiritual realm as a place where forces of light work to protect and guide those who are walking in alignment with their purpose, while opposing forces attempt to create confusion, fear, or distraction. The chosen ones, because they carry influence that can uplift others or reveal truth, often become part of this invisible struggle, even when they are unaware of it. What makes this reality difficult to understand is that chosen ones rarely see these battles directly. Life continues to appear ordinary on the surface. You wake up, move through daily routines, interact with people, and make decisions based on the information available to you. Yet behind many of those ordinary moments, something greater may be unfolding. Protection may be operating quietly, guiding events in ways that you cannot immediately perceive. This protection does not always arrive in dramatic or obvious ways. It often appears through small changes that gradually redirect your path. A delay that frustrates you today may prevent a serious problem tomorrow. A conversation that seems insignificant may reveal the truth about a situation that would have harmed you if it had remained hidden. An unexpected interruption may stop you from entering an environment where your peace or your purpose would have been threatened. For the chosen one, these moments can sometimes feel confusing because they disrupt plans or expectations. Human beings naturally prefer clarity and control over their circumstances. When events suddenly shift direction, it can create feelings of uncertainty. You may ask yourself why something changed or why a situation unfolded differently than you expected. Yet many chosen ones later realize that those changes protected them from outcomes they could not have foreseen. Spiritual protection often works quietly because its purpose is preservation rather than recognition. The goal is not to create spectacle or draw attention to the protection itself. The goal is to ensure that the chosen one's path remains intact despite the challenges that arise along the way. Because of this, many moments of protection pass unnoticed until much later, when the larger pattern becomes visible. Imagine walking through a long journey where obstacles appear at certain points along the road. Each obstacle seems frustrating in the moment because it forces you to slow down or change direction. Yet if you could see the entire map of your journey from beginning to end, you might discover that those obstacles prevented you from entering dangerous areas that were hidden from view. The delays, the detours, and the sudden redirections were not barriers meant to stop you. They were safeguards guiding you away from unseen threats. Many chosen ones only recognize this pattern when they begin reflecting on their past. They notice how certain dangers never fully reached them. Situations that looked like they could have caused serious harm somehow dissolved before the worst occurred. Conflicts that seemed inevitable unexpectedly resolved themselves. Individuals who intended to undermine them were revealed before their actions could succeed. When these events are viewed individually, they may appear random, but when seen together across the span of many years, they begin to form a pattern of quiet protection. This realization can transform the way chosen ones understand their own story. Instead of seeing their life as a sequence of random events, they begin to perceive a sense of guidance that has been present from the beginning. The moments where situations change direction suddenly take on new meaning. The delays that once caused frustration become evidence that something was preserving their path. It is also important to understand that these unseen battles are not meant to create fear or anxiety. The purpose of recognizing this reality is not to imagine that danger surrounds you constantly. Instead, it is to understand that protection is also present. The same spiritual traditions that speak about opposition also speak about guardianship, guidance, and divine presence that surrounds those who walk in alignment with their calling. For the chosen one, this awareness can bring a deep sense of reassurance. Even when circumstances feel uncertain, you are not navigating your journey entirely alone. The protection that has guided you through previous seasons continues to operate even when you cannot see it clearly. The situations that suddenly shift direction, the dangers that dissolve before reaching you, and the people who are revealed at the right moment, may all be signs that something greater is working quietly in the background. And as your awareness grows, you may begin to notice these patterns more easily. Moments that once seemed random begin to feel purposeful. Situations that once caused confusion become reminders that your journey is being guided in ways that extend beyond your immediate understanding. For the chosen ones, the invisible battles taking place around them do not define their path. What defines their path is the quiet protection that continues to operate through those battles, ensuring that, despite every challenge, their purpose remains preserved and their journey continues forward exactly as it was meant to unfold. As we reflect on the idea that unseen battles may unfold around the chosen ones, another important question naturally arises. If these invisible struggles and quiet interventions are truly happening in the background of your life, how would you recognize them? After all, divine protection rarely announces itself in dramatic ways. It does not always arrive with obvious signs or miraculous displays that remove every doubt. More often, it reveals itself through patterns that become visible only when you step back and examine your journey over time. For many chosen ones, the evidence of protection appears in subtle but undeniable ways. When you begin to reflect on your past with honesty and patience, you may notice certain experiences repeating themselves. Moments that seemed like coincidence at the time begin to form a larger pattern. These patterns do not prove anything in a scientific sense, but they often create a quiet awareness that something greater may have been guiding your path. One of the most common patterns is the experience of escaping situations that should have caused serious harm. Many chosen ones can recall moments when they were close to circumstances that could have changed their lives in destructive ways. Yet somehow, they were removed before the worst outcome occurred. Perhaps you were about to enter an environment that later revealed itself to be deeply toxic. Maybe you were on the edge of making a decision that would have placed you in danger, only to experience a sudden interruption that changed your direction. At the time, these moments may have seemed random or insignificant. You may not have thought much about them because life continued moving forward. Yet when you look back at those experiences with a wider perspective, the timing begins to feel unusual. The interruption that once frustrated you may have prevented something far worse from happening. The delay that once seemed inconvenient may have placed you in a safer position without you realizing it. Another pattern often appears through an inner sense of guidance that leads chosen ones away from certain environments or decisions. Many people describe this as intuition, spiritual discernment, or a quiet inner voice that warns them when something does not feel right. This guidance does not always provide clear explanations. Sometimes it simply creates a sense of discomfort or hesitation that encourages you to step back before moving forward. There may have been times when you felt strongly that you should not enter a particular situation, even though everything on the surface appeared normal. You may have declined an invitation, avoided a location, or changed your plans without fully understanding why. Later, you might have discovered that something harmful occurred in that environment, or that the situation carried risks you could not have seen in advance. Moments like these often leave chosen ones wondering how they knew to step away at exactly the right time. This inner guidance can be one of the quiet ways divine protection operates. Instead of physically removing danger from your path, it gently redirects your decisions, so that you avoid those dangers altogether. The protection appears through awareness rather than intervention. It works through the subtle shaping of your instincts and perceptions, guiding you towards safer choices, even when the reasoning behind those choices is not immediately clear. Another sign that divine protection may have been active in your life appears when individuals who intended harm eventually reveal themselves or are removed from your environment. For the chosen one, not everyone who enters their life arrives with supportive intentions. Some people may carry jealousy, resentment, or hidden motives that become visible only after time has passed. Yet many chosen ones discover that those individuals rarely succeed in causing lasting damage. Their intentions are eventually exposed through their own actions. The truth about their character becomes visible to others. Circumstances shift in ways that distance them from your life. What once seemed like a threatening presence gradually disappears, often without you needing to confront them directly. These moments can feel surprising because they often unfold without your involvement. The situation resolves itself through events you did not orchestrate. The person who intended harm becomes known for their behavior. The environment that once felt tense suddenly changes as the influence of that individual fades. For many chosen ones, experiences like this create a growing awareness that protection may have been operating behind the scenes. Even during the most difficult seasons of life, another pattern often becomes visible. There may have been periods where the pressure surrounding you felt overwhelming. You may have experienced emotional pain, disappointment, or uncertainty that made it difficult to see a clear path forward. In those moments, it may have seemed as though everything was falling apart. Yet, despite the intensity of those seasons, something within you continued to hold together. You did not completely collapse under the weight of those experiences. Even when your strength felt limited, you found a way to continue moving forward. Support appeared at unexpected moments. Encouragement arrived through conversations or insights that helped you regain your balance. Slowly, the season that once seemed unbearable began to pass. For many chosen ones, surviving these periods becomes one of the clearest signs that protection has been present. It is not that they were spared from hardship. In fact, they often faced challenges that felt deeply overwhelming. The difference is that those challenges did not ultimately destroy them. Instead, they became experiences that strengthened their resilience and deepened their understanding of themselves. When you examine all of these patterns together, a larger picture begins to form. The moments where you escaped danger, the guidance that redirected your choices, the exposure of people who intended harm, and the strength that carried you through difficult seasons, all begin to point toward a possibility that is both humbling and profound. Perhaps your life has been shaped by more than coincidence. For the chosen one, recognizing these patterns can bring a new sense of clarity to experiences that once seemed confusing. Events that previously looked random begin to appear connected. The interruptions that once frustrated you take on new meaning. The moments when situations change direction suddenly begin to look less like accidents and more like protection. This awareness does not require you to believe that every event in your life is perfectly controlled, or that nothing difficult will ever happen again. Life will continue to include challenges, uncertainty, and moments that test your strength. Yet recognizing the presence of protection in your past can create a foundation of trust for the future. When you know that something has quietly guided your path before, it becomes easier to believe that the same guidance can continue operating as you move forward. The chosen one begins to walk with a deeper sense of peace, understanding that even when circumstances appear uncertain, the journey may still be unfolding under the watch of a force greater than anything visible to the human eye. And for many chosen ones, this realization becomes one of the most powerful sources of confidence they carry. The evidence of protection is already written into the story of their lives. They simply needed time, reflection, and perspective to recognize that the greater force guiding their path had been there all along. As we begin to recognize the patterns that reveal divine protection throughout the lives of the chosen ones, another realization slowly emerges. In the previous section, we explored the signs that protection may already have been operating in your life. Moments when you escaped harm, situations where guidance redirected your path, and seasons where hidden dangers were quietly removed before they could damage your future. Yet there is another form of protection that often confuses chosen ones more than any other. Unlike the protection that removes danger or reveals harmful influences, this form of protection appears as something far less dramatic. It appears as waiting. For many chosen ones, one of the most difficult experiences in their journey is the feeling that life is moving slower than it should. You may see others around you achieving milestones, building careers, forming families, or stepping into opportunities that seem to come easily to them. Meanwhile, your own path may feel delayed, uncertain, or suspended in a season where nothing seems to move forward. In those moments, it can feel as though your prayers have been unanswered, or that your progress has somehow stalled. Waiting can create deep frustration because human beings naturally seek progress and clarity. When time passes without visible change, the mind begins searching for explanations. You may question whether you made the wrong decisions or whether you misunderstood your calling. The silence that accompanies these seasons can make it difficult to maintain confidence in the direction of your life. Yet within many spiritual traditions, waiting is not viewed as a sign of abandonment. Instead, it is often understood as a form of preparation. Divine protection sometimes appears as delay because certain blessings can become dangerous if they arrive before you are ready to carry them. Opportunities that seem desirable may require maturity, discipline, and wisdom that can only be developed through time and experience. If those opportunities arrive too early, the person receiving them may not yet possess the stability required to manage them responsibly. In such cases, what appears to be delay may actually be protection from the consequences of premature success. Consider the responsibility that often accompanies the purpose of the chosen one. A calling that influences others requires emotional strength, clarity of character, and resilience in the face of criticism or opposition. Without these qualities, the pressure of that role could become overwhelming. Preparation becomes essential because the mission itself demands more than simple enthusiasm or desire. It requires depth of understanding and the ability to remain grounded even when circumstances become difficult. Growth rarely happens instantly. It develops through experiences that gradually shape a person's perspective. Challenges teach patience and humility. Mistakes create awareness that leads to wiser decisions. Periods of uncertainty force individuals to confront their fears and strengthen their faith. These experiences may feel uncomfortable or slow while they are happening, but they contribute to the formation of character that will later sustain the chosen one when greater responsibilities arrive. For many chosen ones, the seasons of waiting become the very environments where this transformation occurs. During these times, you may feel as though nothing significant is happening. Your external circumstances may appear ordinary or even stagnant, yet internally, something important is taking place. Your understanding of yourself begins to deepen, your priorities become clearer. The motivations that drive your decisions gradually align with values that are stronger and more stable than before. Resilience is another quality that often develops during these seasons. When life moves slowly, patience becomes necessary. The ability to remain committed to your path without immediate results strengthens your determination. Each day you continue forward despite uncertainty becomes evidence of your dedication to the purpose you believe in. Over time, this persistence forms a foundation of endurance that will support you when your responsibilities expand. Spiritual understanding also grows in these quiet seasons. When external activity slows down, there is more space for reflection and inner awareness. You begin to notice patterns in your thoughts, your reactions, and your beliefs. Questions that once felt confusing gradually become clearer as you spend more time examining the direction of your life. Many chosen ones discover that their relationship with faith becomes deeper during these periods because they are forced to trust guidance that cannot yet be fully seen. What makes these seasons particularly challenging is that the preparation is rarely visible to others. People around you may not understand why your path appears slower or different from theirs. They may measure success through visible achievements that occur quickly, while the transformation happening within you remains hidden. This can create moments where you feel misunderstood or pressured to compare your progress with the progress of others. Yet comparison often overlooks the uniqueness of each individual journey. The timing of your path may not resemble the timing of someone else's, because the purpose you are preparing for may require a completely different foundation. What looks like stagnation from the outside may actually be a period where essential qualities are being developed beneath the surface. Nature offers a useful example of this principle. Many of the strongest trees spend years growing roots before their branches rise high above the ground. During that early stage, almost nothing visible appears to be happening. Yet beneath the soil, the root system is expanding and strengthening. That hidden growth determines whether the tree will later be able to withstand powerful storms. Without those deep roots, the tree would collapse as soon as strong winds arrived. In a similar way, the waiting seasons in the life of the chosen one often create the internal structure needed to support future responsibilities. The patience you develop during delay becomes the calm that sustains you during pressure. The wisdom gained through reflection becomes the guidance you offer to others. The resilience formed through uncertainty becomes the strength that allows you to remain steady when challenges arise. Eventually, there comes a moment when the purpose you have been preparing for begins to reveal itself more clearly. Opportunities appear that align with the growth you have experienced. Situations emerge where your patience, your insight, and your resilience become exactly what is needed. The waiting that once felt endless suddenly makes sense when viewed from this new perspective. For many chosen ones, this realization transforms their understanding of the delays they once feared. What felt like wasted time becomes recognized as necessary preparation. The seasons where nothing seemed to move forward become the periods where the most important transformation occurred. When you begin to see delay in this way, the narrative of your life changes once again. Waiting no longer feels like punishment or neglect. Instead, it becomes part of a protective process that ensures you are ready when the moment of purpose finally arrives. The time that once seemed empty becomes filled with meaning because it prepared you for a future that required a stronger, wiser, and more resilient version of yourself. And in that realization, the chosen one discovers that what once felt like stagnation may have been the quiet preparation for a moment that will eventually change everything. After recognizing the patterns of protection, the redirections that saved you from harm, the separations that preserved your purpose, and the seasons of waiting that prepared you for something greater, a transformation begins to take place inside the chosen one. The understanding of divine protection is not meant to remain an abstract idea or a comforting belief. It gradually becomes a new way of moving through life. When someone truly begins to see the evidence of protection woven through their past, the way they interpret the present begins to change as well. At the beginning of the journey, fear often has a powerful influence. Fear grows from uncertainty. It whispers questions that have no easy answers. What if things fall apart again? What if the next step leads to failure? What if the people around you turn against you? For many chosen ones, these questions arise because they have already experienced seasons of hardship, betrayal, and confusion. The memory of those experiences can make the future feel unpredictable. Yet something shifts when you begin to recognize that you were not abandoned during those earlier seasons. When you look back and see how protection appeared in ways you did not initially understand, fear begins to lose some of its power. You realize that even when circumstances look dangerous or overwhelming, something preserved your path. Situations that should have destroyed you did not succeed. Moments that felt like the end of your journey became the beginning of something new. This awareness slowly replaces fear with a deeper sense of security. It does not mean that challenges disappear or that uncertainty vanishes entirely. Life remains unpredictable in many ways, but the chosen one begins to move forward with the quiet knowledge that they are not walking alone through those uncertainties. The same protection that guided them through earlier seasons continues to exist, even when its presence is not immediately visible. As fear begins to loosen its grip, faith naturally grows stronger. Faith is not blind optimism or the denial of difficulty. Instead, it becomes a recognition that guidance has already been active throughout your life. When you begin to notice the patterns of protection in your past, your trust in the path ahead becomes easier to maintain. Think about how many moments once seemed confusing, but later revealed themselves as necessary turning points. There may have been doors that closed when you desperately wanted them to open. There may have been people who left your life when you believed they would remain forever. There may have been opportunities that disappeared just as you thought your future was beginning to take shape. At the time, those moments may have felt painful and disorienting. Yet when you examine those experiences from your current perspective, many of them now carry a different meaning. The closed doors may have prevented you from entering environments that would have drained your spirit. The people who left may have created space for healthier relationships to appear. The opportunities that vanished may have redirected you toward paths that aligned more closely with your true calling. Each of these realizations strengthens faith because they demonstrate that your journey has not been random. Guidance has been present even when you could not see it clearly. The recognition of this guidance builds a foundation of trust that allows you to face the future with greater calm and confidence. Confidence does not mean arrogance or the belief that everything will unfold exactly as you expect. Instead, it emerges from the understanding that your path is connected to something larger than your immediate circumstances. When the chosen one begins to trust that their journey is being directed toward a greater purpose, the pressure to control every outcome begins to fade. In the early stages of the journey, it is common to question every challenge that appears. When difficulties arise, the instinctive response is often to ask why they are happening. Why is this obstacle here? Why did this plan fail? Why did this relationship collapse? These questions are natural because human beings search for meaning in the experiences they face. But as your understanding of divine protection grows, the nature of those questions begins to shift. Instead of assuming that every difficulty represents failure or punishment, you begin to consider the possibility that challenges are part of the protected journey itself. Obstacles may still appear, but they no longer automatically signal that something has gone wrong. Challenges can become opportunities for refinement. They can reveal strengths that were previously hidden. They can teach patience, resilience, and wisdom in ways that comfort and stability rarely do. When you recognize that your path has already been preserved through many difficulties, the next challenge feels less threatening. It becomes another stage in the process, rather than a sign that the process has failed. This shift in perspective creates a remarkable sense of peace for many chosen ones. Instead of constantly bracing for disaster, you begin to walk forward with quiet confidence. You understand that even when circumstances appear uncertain, your journey has already shown evidence of guidance and protection. The road ahead may still include twists and turns, but the pattern of preservation in your past suggests that those turns are not leading you toward destruction. Living with confidence in divine protection also changes the way chosen ones interact with others. When fear and uncertainty lose their dominance, you become less reactive to negativity or opposition. Criticism, misunderstanding, and temporary setbacks no longer define your sense of identity. You begin to focus less on proving yourself to others and more on remaining aligned with the purpose you believe you have been given. This calm confidence can appear unusual to those who do not share the same understanding. Others may wonder why you remain steady when situations become difficult. They may question how you continue moving forward, despite challenges that would discourage many people. What they may not realize is that your strength does not come from believing that everything will always be easy. It comes from recognizing that your life has already been guided through storms that once seemed impossible to survive. The chosen one eventually learns that confidence is not the absence of difficulty, it is the presence of trust. Trust that the protection which has already carried you through countless moments of uncertainty is still active as your journey continues. When you live with that awareness, your relationship with challenges changes completely. Instead of viewing them as signs that your path is collapsing, you begin to see them as part of the terrain you were always meant to travel. The mountains and valleys of the journey remain, but your understanding of them evolves. What once looked like danger becomes training. What once felt like delay becomes preparation. What once appeared to be rejection becomes redirection. And the chosen one walks forward, not because the path is easy, but because they have learned to trust that the path itself is protected. As we come to the end of this message, it is worth pausing for a moment to reflect on the journey we have explored together. The story of the chosen ones is not a story of perfection, and it is certainly not a story of a life without hardship. Instead, it is a story of guidance that often becomes visible only after time has passed. When you begin to look back across the seasons of your life, a quiet truth may start to emerge. the protection surrounding you has likely been present far longer than you ever realized. Think about the moments that once confused you, the doors that closed without explanation, the plans that seemed promising but suddenly disappeared, the relationships that ended even though you believed they would last. At the time, each of those experiences may have felt painful or even unfair. You may have questioned why certain things were taken away from you, or why your path seemed to change direction so suddenly. Yet, with the perspective that comes from time and reflection, many chosen ones begin to see those moments differently. What once felt like rejection may have been protection. What once appeared to be loss may have been the careful redirection of your life away from something that would have harmed your future. The path of the chosen one is rarely simple. It often includes seasons of uncertainty, periods of waiting, and moments when you feel separated from people or places that once felt familiar. But even in those difficult seasons, the journey is not unguarded. The protection that surrounds a life guided by purpose does not always remove challenges, yet it quietly ensures that those challenges do not erase the destiny placed within you. There may have been moments when you felt alone, moments when the direction of your life seemed unclear, or moments when the weight of your experiences felt overwhelming. Yet despite all of that, you are still here. Your story continues. The very fact that you have made it through every previous challenge is evidence that something has been preserving your path, even when you did not fully understand it. When you begin to recognize this pattern, your perspective on the future begins to change. Confidence does not come from believing that life will always be predictable or easy. Instead, it grows from the realization that your journey has been guided in ways you could not always see. The chosen one learns to walk forward with trust, understanding that the same protection that carried them through the past continues to operate in the present. So as you move forward from this moment, remember that every step of your journey matters. The detours, the delays, and the unexpected turns may all be part of a larger design, shaping the purpose that is unfolding in your life. Even when the path ahead feels uncertain, you can continue walking with the quiet assurance that you are not traveling it alone. And if this message spoke to your heart and helped you see your journey in a new light, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may also be walking the path of a chosen one, and subscribe to the channel for more content about spiritual growth, faith, and divine guidance.